our task today, we're going to talk about how check and check out fits. So if you hear the term check and check out and it's CICO, not sicko, you can say sicko if you want. No. Some people say sicko, some people say SICO. But the idea is that we want to see how it fits in the overall system of positive behavior support. We're also going to talk about the critical features. I'm going to show you a short video because it really captures all of the features. We're going to talk about who it's appropriate for, and then if we have some time, we've really expanded this beyond in terms of helping support Tier 3 as well as kids with internalizing. And then we're going to have you develop a reinforcement system. And then we're going to also talk about using data for decision making, talk about how do we fade kids from the intervention, and then how do you train faculty, students, and parents. So you all have seen this triangle. Is your triangle similar to this in Davis? Or is it a different triangle?
No, it's similar.
Does anyone have it tattooed on themselves yet?
Right here.
Right here. And you have it tattooed in your brain. So the idea is that, and I won't explain the triangle because if you're doing MTSS, you know what it is. But here's what I want to caution you. This is, check-in, check-out is a Tier 2 intervention for kids that are at risk, not currently engaged in severe problem behavior. Here's the thing, the biggest mistake schools make is they try to individualize the intervention immediately. Please don't do that. I'm going to ask you to design your intervention so you can implement similarly across kids. How and we have some research, we've got school populations that have gotten up to 11% of their student population on this. How they do that, with fidelity by the way, how they do that is they implement the same across kids. So once a teacher learns how to do it and embed it in his or her classroom, they just get the next student and they know how to do it. They also have a fluent check-in, check-out process. And it's the minute that you make it different across kids, you lose efficiency. So when people say, but this kid needs this, hold on a second. Every child, the kids in this intervention need more practice and feedback on following expectations. They need micro-teaching moments, reteaching, right? So we will not individualize until we've given all the kids at risk at least a version of check and check out. So let me go ahead and show you a video. What I want you to do is look at how our kids are identified, and then what does check-in look like? What does the teacher feedback look like? We've built in some non-examples. Hopefully you'll see that. What does check-out look like? Data for decision making. So let me go ahead and show you that. We're going to show part of it now, and then I'm going to show part of it later in the training. And I promise also halfway through I will give you a break. But what you should find is under the handouts, the first part of the handouts is a thing called the Development and Implementation Guide. Here's our task. By the end of this workshop, you will answer all of those questions with your team, and then you'll be ready to pilot. So the first thing that you need to do is you need to determine who the coordinator will be. Does anybody know people in schools that don't like children?
Yeah.
And you're not sure why they're in education? Those are the people that you don't choose. Okay? This has to be somebody that kids like, they like kids. They don't have to be the cool cheerleader, but they have to be somebody that they look forward to. So the main thing is, the next question is, where will check-in, check-out occur? For most kids, older kids don't necessarily want to be on it. They want all their friends to know they're on it. So we make this a private location if possible. If you're a big high school, you may need to have more than one coordinator, as you saw in the video, and you may need to have more than one location, right? Even in middle school, if your middle school is big. You need to determine the maximum number of kids. Here's why it's important. Once you get the intervention up and running, all your teachers are going to want to access it. And it won't work. You'll blow up the system if you don't know what is the maximum number we can support. Here's the fun part. What are you going to name it? You have to name it something cool. Why is that important, that you name it something cool? So the kids think in school, so they want to do it. So when you're trying to talk to parents about it, they think it's important. And then you need to, because the kids are used to seeing somebody every day, have substitutes when the person, the check and check out person, the coordinator or facilitator is absent. So the middle school we learned it from, it was called, not CICO, it was called the Behavior Education Program, or BEP. And what the student carried around was the daily progress report. Okay, so you're going to name two things. You're going to name the intervention, and you're going to name what the student carries around. Or if it's electronic, you could name that. This is a middle school I worked with, also in Oregon. It was the Kennedy card program, and so what the kid carried around was a Kennedy card. Hello, update, and goodbye, hugs. So like secondary schools, we want them not to hug, so that's not a good one. This is an elementary school. A lot of times schools will choose a mascot. Hawk, these were the Skyhots, and their acronym was Helping a Winning Kid. So obviously, who wouldn't want their kid on that? And what the kid carried around was the Hawk report. The last one, they were the Lions, and this stood for Reinforcement of Appropriate Responses. They had a behaviorist on that team. And then what the kid carried around was a wild card. Please don't call it a behavior card or a behavior plan. Because, well, one, people will say, we've done behavior card. And don't call it contracts. People say, we've done contracts. Why this works? We know this works for 70% of the kids. What you saw in that video, we have enough research to know it works for 70% of the kids. If it's not working for 70% of your kids, you're not doing it right. There's something about the intervention that's not working. You haven't found effective reinforcers. The person who's checking in is kind of mean. The teachers are not giving the feedback. Whenever 70% of your kids are not meeting the expectation, go back and look at the system features. That's what MTSS is about. It's not just the kids aren't making progress. What is it about your system that's not supporting? And one of the questions is, did you give it a positive profile in your school? That's what's going to be important. Okay, so this is, please, you all have school-wide expectations, right? Tier 1 school-wide expectations. Please put them on your DPR, because these are the kids that need more practice and feedback. You must have, in middle and high school, junior high and high school, it's easy. You do it by period, right? And this is a middle school with a block schedule. So in A day, they have first, second, third, fourth, and homeroom. B day, they have the other periods. You must have at least, there should be a 3-point, or if you want, 4-point marking system. I just did a training for one of the elementary schools in Granite. They are connecting this ranking with the standards-based grading, the 1, 2, 3, 4. We have samples of that if you're interested. The 3 is the expected. Are you guys doing, what is it called? Performance-based grading, standard-based grading? What is it called? Standards-based? Okay, so I was right. So if you're doing that and you want to connect your daily progress report to those types of things, we have some examples of that. That's just brand new, actually. So this is an example of an elementary school where kids have different schedules and it's hard to find natural breaks for some elementary schools. So they did it by language arts 1, because language arts block is huge, right? Or it should be in elementary school, because that's the biggest part of their day, or a large part of their day. So they broke it into 2 blocks, BLAST, content integration, math, rotation 1, rotation 2, which are specials. So whatever works for you all, whatever works across most of your kids, you have to do it across most of your kids. You cannot individualize this. This is when you will lose efficiency, okay? Then it's helpful for the teachers if you tell them when you get a 2, a 0 to 1 reminders, corrections, you get a 2. 1, it took this many reminders, and this was try again. I have found some people, and Glenn next door will tell you, Glenn and I have argued that he wants a 5-point scale. And I say, I cannot get consistency across teachers on a 5-point scale. I can barely do it on a 3-point. If you're going to do 4, that's fine. But the reason we don't do, yes, a 5-point or 10-point is more reliable if you want to look at the research literature, but I can't get consensus. We have on the card, instead of comments, we put Celebrations. What if you put comments? What will teachers do? Right. So we're not encouraging. This part is not required. The celebrations is not required, but it is a prompt for more positive. Here's a 1, 2, 3, 4. This is not a standards-based grading, but you could at least see how they figured it out. If you want a sample of how we did the standards-based grading, we just did it the other day, and I can share that with Devin, get that to you. This is an example of an electronic daily progress report that is done on a Google Doc format. There is no research behind the electronic, and if anybody needs a master's thesis or a dissertation, that'd be awesome. They're currently in the process of doing a high school app for this, but it's brand new. Oregon is just doing it, so it probably won't be ready for about a year or so. But if you do the electronic part, you got to make sure the teacher does the feedback. The active ingredient of this intervention, the active ingredient is the teaching, the micro-teaching moment. Kids are not going to change their behavior unless you do those micro-teachings. You know, when a kid doesn't know a letter sound, you drill it, right? Until they get it to mastery. And so with behavior, what we're doing is we're providing multiple examples of, yes, that was an example of being respectful, right? Show me what being respectful looks like. So some people think, in schools that I've been in, they think if they filled out the card, that's the intervention. The intervention is they have given the feedback and allowed the student to practice. This is another high school we've worked with. They made their DPR on a wallet-sized card. So they wanted the kids to carry it, but they didn't want them to look different. So they put their daily progress report on you can see to scale how small it was. I have electronic versions of that if you want. I'm about ready to do your part. So what does the coordinator do is they lead check in and check out. They enter the data. They organize the records. We tend to get permission from parents. So this coordinator person, or maybe the multiple people, it can't be a parent volunteer. It has to be somebody in the school every day. People ask me, can it be one person in the morning all week and one person in the afternoon? Yes, if they communicate well. In most of the districts I work in, it is a paraprofessional supervised by somebody who knows behavior, a counselor, school psychologist, special educator, principal, assistant principal, because you have to know about kids with behavior problems. You have to know how to handle and manage them. If you want, I have training materials to train that person. You don't have to buy the book. I have a whole folder. Please let me know if you want that. But as I mentioned, they should be positive and like children. So you saw in the video you can have multiple coordinators. And in Illinois, as I mentioned, we got up to 11%. Because here's what they chose. The state, or the MTSS, chose we are going to use this intervention as our first line of defense with all kids, right? Unless they have academic deficits. This is not a Tier 2 intervention for academic deficits. But their goal was to, Could it be? Yeah, so her question is, yes, it could be for academic, and we have an academic version. Okay. So we'll get to that later. Good preview. Yes, we do have it for kids on, and where it started at the middle school, we had an academic check and check out, and we had a behavior check and check out. We'll get to that later. But I highly, highly encourage you to start with what I call basic, which is what we're going over today. And then once you get the system down, the checking in, the checking out, the people involved, the reinforcement system, then branch out to other behaviors. We've done it with kids internalizing, anxious, shy, and depressed. Anybody needs a dissertation, we need it middle and high school, but the data were awesome. So we're looking for different behaviors. That's a more advanced training, or we can talk about that. But the idea is that if you have more people checking in and out, in Bluff Elementary, they don't have money for a coordinator. So they've asked teachers to agree to check in 5 kids. The main thing that you want, if people are agreeing to check kids in, it is not a mentoring relationship. And by that I mean, or a counseling session. When you have 1 or 2 kids, it turns into a counseling session, and that's not what it's for. It's actually meant to prompt positive behavior, not to talk about the litany of crud they have going on at home and how terrible their home life is. That's not the purpose, right? That turns into tier 3, and you've got folks who are doing interventions and counseling who shouldn't. So it really is, if you're going to have multiple coordinators, make sure they have 5 so they keep that quick check-in and check-out. Doesn't mean that some of these kids won't need more, but we have to start with the basic. So what I want you to do in your teams for about 20, maybe 25 minutes, we'll see how we do, probably 20, is to answer the questions for number 1 and number 2. So you'll be developing your daily progress report to fit your school. There are samples in here if you want to electronically change them, so you don't have to create your own from scratch. And you will also be naming it and figuring out how, like the coordinator and so forth. So answer the questions under number 1 and number 2. What questions do you have before I set you free?
Just a broad question. Have you implemented this during recess, and
Oh.
is it effective?
Yes, we have implemented during recess, but it's a different intervention. And by that I mean we have some kids who just need recess, so we do a version of it for recess, and we have some kids who are on this and recess. The basic version doesn't cover recess, and it doesn't cover unstructured settings. This intervention is for kids who have problem behavior in the classroom. If they have problem behavior in passing times, at lunch, and so forth, this is not the intervention. But we have done recess versions of it, and we can talk more about that. Okay, what questions do you have about? I know that you all have logistical issues, you all have financial issues, and but the issue is, hopefully you can find somebody. They're going to use a grandparent volunteer who is there every day, right? They have 2. You have 2 now. And they're telling me that person already has access to student data, so it's not a FERPA issue. So it could be a volunteer, but it has to be somebody who's in the building every day. Maybe it's a volunteer that could be there every day in the morning, and then a different one at night, or in the afternoon, I mean. But the idea is the consistency is really important. It can't be a person on Monday, a person on Tuesday, a person on Wednesday, because it's the connection with another adult that's really helpful. So your next task, and I'll just talk for a few minutes, and then I'll have you do this, and then we'll come back and take a break. So your next task is to develop a reinforcement system. You don't have to spend money to do this. You can time and with people, time with their peers if they're older, is what's really reinforcing. So, but you want to decide what is your bare minimum percentage of points that you want the students to get to earn a goal. Most schools I work with, it's either 70 or 80. And then sometimes people develop systems of reinforcement for just checking in and checking out. So what they get is a lottery ticket for checking in, a lottery ticket for checking out, just for engaging in the behavior. Here's why. If they've had a bad day, what do you think they want to do the daily progress report? Yeah. Right. So what this lottery ticket system is I want to see you even if you've had a bad day. Some schools say we don't need that. They just love seeing us even if they've had a bad day. So that depends on you. But what we do is at the end of the week, we just have a little drawing and we post the name for the kids that are on it. And it can be something very simple that they're interested in. But you should have a different reinforcer if they've checked out and met their goal. But you have to figure out what the kids are willing to work for. We'll talk about that. So going back, the high school was asking me, how do these kids do it for a couple of weeks, and then they're not so interested? How do we get around that? First thing, you tell the older kids, because they're not, the younger kids, you have to force them to get off. The older kids, you kind of have to talk them into doing it. Tell them it's time limited. Tell them they will graduate, right? You'll be alumni. And they can help you pick reinforcers, right? And then we need to have something in place for when they get office discipline referrals. Because what's happening is this is feedback throughout the class, and it's classroom behavior, and they're doing great, and they're rocking it. Then they go out to recess, or they're doing transition to lunch in middle or high, and junior high or high, and they beat somebody up, but it's never reflected on the card, right? So make sure that you have a system that alerts the check-in, check-out person if they receive a referral. So your decision, are there going to be daily rewards? Now, you don't have to do that. But you also can't have a kid on this for 3 weeks and never receive a reward, right? That doesn't work. So some of my schools have used, I try to stay away from salt and sugar, but some of my schools have used some sort of way to do daily, but also have longer-term rewards, and those longer-term rewards are things with adults and the things that don't cost money. When we do those things with adults, kids need a promise that it's going to happen, and younger kids need things in their hot little hands. So we give them activity coupons, and we tell them, we promise you this activity with who, when, and where, and then a signature, right? This could be in junior high and high school. It could be you have 10 extra minutes with 5 of your friends at this time. Obviously, you have to get permission and so forth. So this activity could be with people that they choose to be with. Including other people on it is going to be important. This is a junior high, and if the students have met their goal on a daily basis, they get time on the Lego wall. I don't know what, I'm not a big Lego fan myself. You step on them, it hurts. But this is something that this is actually in New York. They actually really enjoy spending this time if they've met their goal. So you do not necessarily, you could have different reinforcers based on the percentage of points that they earn. So for example, if students, so you can come up with, as you saw in the video, a savings card, credit card. People are like, wait, we're in a credit crisis. I want to call it savings. Call it whatever you want. But how many points student earns depends on their percentage. So bare minimum 70, they get 1 point. 80% they get 2. 90 is 3. If they get 100, it's really rare, very rare. But the idea is you can just save those up. If they want to spend soon, they can. If they want to spend, or if it doesn't work for your school to do it daily, you can have a certain day of the week that you do it. Just don't delay reinforcement too much. It's really sophisticated. We highlight the credit card, right? You don't do a punch card system. That takes too long. So we basically highlight it when they earn the points, and we cross them out with a pen when they spend them. That makes it easier on the person doing the reinforcement system. With older kids, and you can even ask younger kids, but with older kids, if you look in the handouts, there is a reinforcer preference. We don't know anything if it's reinforcing until we know if it changes the behavior, but there is an assessment where you can ask the kids what are they willing to earn. I had a kid who was really willing to earn time out of class to read Harry Potter. That's what he wanted to do. The intervention was not working for him. We try to have it similar across kids, but it's trying to have it meaningful for that student. So what I want you to do for the next 15 minutes or so is to answer the questions under number 3 that are in the handouts. Questions about that? Okay, go. So what questions do you have about reinforcement?
Say the question, I'm sorry.
What questions do you have about developing a reinforcement system for this intervention? Yes?
So we are, our MTSS goal is really these internalizers. We told Leanne we don't have behavior problems.
They're a high school that doesn't have behavior problems. Anybody else want to work there?
No. But we have mental health issues. So we said what reinforcement would work for internalizers, right? And a high school kid.
Mm-hmm.
I could have,
You ask them.
yeah, and that's.
And to be honest with you, it's okay. If they want escape as their reinforcer, that's fine. That's what you want is if throughout the day they are showing. Okay, think about it. If you're an internalizer, and you're asking them to do more social engagement. I need a break. So it's okay to use a break or alone time as reinforcement because they've shown throughout the day that they're trying to come out and engage in the environment, and you're giving them what they want. I would ask them what they're interested in earning, but I also would allow them escape or downtime or whatever it is that they need to do to decompress. I would allow that as a reinforcer. Any other questions? Yes. Yeah, so basically, yeah, their function is escape.
What we came up with, what the conversation centered around was where we carve out that escape.
Right.
That's more of a logistical thing.
Right, that is a logistical thing to figure out, yes. So here's what we're going to do. like I said, this group over here asked me if it works for kids with academic problems. Yes. So I want you, except for the high school, because they have a pass, because they have no kids with externalizing behavior, they can start with internalizing. Please don't do that. Here's what I want you to do. Start with the basic program, which is what we're doing today. Then when you get the check-in, check-out going and so forth, you can move it with the internalizers, kids who are anxious, shy, depressed. We'd have it for organizational skills, so kids with ADHD, executive functioning issues. And we have done it for recess. And I have had that done in one school. They've done all 4. The cards are the same except that they're in their school-wide expectations, but then they're specific to that behavior. Organizational kids need to work on this, and all 10 kids on organization do that. The kids on internalizing need to work on this, and the card looks the same. So which students will be, when we talk about basic, you need to decide, is it office discipline referrals that are going to identify these kids? Any of you use Think Time? If you're using Think Time and they're going there consistently, guess what? They're at risk. Because they should not be going there consistently. That means it doesn't work. You're going to develop a parental consent form. In the handouts, there is an example. Also, if kids come in from a different school, you may want to see, since your whole district, hopefully by the time, in like 5 years, we'll all be doing check and check out. Maybe they were on a different program in a different school. And also, if kids are on it till the end of the school year, don't automatically put them on the next year. Anybody see a new teacher actually is the intervention, right? So it may be that they do, if they have a good job, they do a good job, they're able to do the intervention. So in order to do MTSS, what used to be called response to intervention, MTSS, you have to use the data for decision making. You have to. I have a school I'm working with now. They do the check and check out, and I'd like to say I trained them because I did, and nobody's looking at the data. So that doesn't work. You have to look at the data. So find a team in your school that meets at least twice a month that you can embed data system analysis. Don't start a new team, whether it's your SST team, your MTSS team, whatever team looks at behavior, embed check and check out. The 2 questions you want to answer, write these down because they're not on the slide. The 2 questions you want to answer, are 70% of our students benefiting from this intervention? You're looking at the systems question first. Look across all the kids and all the data. If they're not, what's going on with the system? What do we need to change about the system? Did we not pick the right reinforcers? Are the teachers not giving the feedback? What is it about the system that's not working? First question. Second question is, are there individual kids who need more? Who need more or who need a tweak to the system? I was talking about when I work with kids receiving Tier 3 intervention, I don't stop this intervention. I'm going to say that again. I do not stop this intervention. People go, oh, Tier 2, and then when they're done with Tier 2, they throw it out and they start with Tier 3. Here's why I don't stop this intervention. I can get teachers to collect these data. I can get them to fill out a daily progress report. When I ask them to, can you please record the number of times that they've done tantrums in your class, the number of times they talked out or were disrespectful, the number of times that they look at me like, you are insane, I'm not going to do that. So what I do is they're used to this data collection. I keep it, I keep the intervention, and I layer up. If you saw in the video, there's a whole chapter on that. What we do is we do make it more individualized, but we don't do that until we've done basic, right? If any of you have kids on behavior plans, if you've designed a really well-designed behavior plan, it should have replacement behaviors you're teaching kids, things that you want to see to replace their problem behavior. Guess what? Those replacement behaviors can be on the card. That's when it becomes individualized, but not till Tier 3. So don't throw away the intervention if it's not working. Layer up and add things to it. You need to have somebody who's responsible for summarizing the data. So we have, I spent a lot of time training paraprofessionals how to graph with Excel. and I lost my mind. So we had somebody create data systems. So we have Excel spreadsheets that you can use. All you have to do is put in percentage of points, and it graphs it. Okay? You can use check and check out Swiss, but it costs, what, $200? Do you guys use Swiss up here? Yes. Oh, then you should get check and check out Swiss. You don't need to have check and check out Swiss. It's just slick. Here's why. Because it cross-references the kids who are on check and check out with their office discipline referral data. And it graphs the behavior in real time and provides lots of features that a web-based system provides that my Excel tracking sheet won't. So it may be worth, I think it's $200 extra. I think it's $200 a year. No, per year, I think. I didn't think so. How frequently, you want to make sure that you're sharing the data with the staff. We're supporting this many students. This many students are responding. And also think about how often do you want to share with the parents. The parents may be signing the form, but they are not actually seeing the data. If you're interested in this is in the handouts. I won't spend a lot of time. In the schools that I work in, maybe they're an anomaly. They're not doing a great job of tracking Tier 2. Anybody doing a great job of tracking Tier 2? Okay, so we designed a Tier 2, Tier 3. So we've designed a Tier 2, Tier 3, not we, my colleagues, have designed a Tier 2, Tier 3 tracking tool. You determine what response to intervention means. And this is the number of kids responding, and so forth. So that's just a tool that's available for you. When you enter points, it is percentage of points, not number of points. That's if you're in high school or junior high. That means if they've missed a period, you can decide what to do. A 0 means they checked in and they did not check out. And I want that separate from an absence, right? You can't put 0 in for an absence. Now, Swiss, check and check out Swiss will allow you to do absence. It'll allow you to do no data, like the kid crunched. You knew they checked in, but they crunched up the card, so you don't actually have the data. So they have a no data point, and so forth. So the goal in your team meetings, once you decided whether the system is working with 70% of your kids, then you want to say which kids maybe need additional reinforcement. How's Ryan doing if 80% of points is the goal? How's Ryan doing, everybody? What? He's doing well. How is Rochelle doing? Okay, this is a real student, real kid from one of my schools, right? This is a bring the paddles out, things are not going well, right? So this is in that team meeting where you're embedding it in your behavior team. We need to triage this kid, okay? And you cannot wait every month. That's what people say, well, we meet with our PBS team once a month. Well, look how far south this kid's going, right? So the idea is at least twice a month finds a place to analyze data. So I'm not going to show this, but I'm going to have Devin send you the Excel, several versions of an Excel tracking sheet so you can enter the data. Realize these are real data from one of my schools. It is like the stock market. There is bounce. There are kids who go below the line, right? Well below the line. The idea is that they're going to have bad days. These are kids at risk. But the idea is that the majority of the time, hopefully they're meeting their goal. If not, they need more. Yes?
So I think it's Swiss that will give you a breakdown on the days, times of the days that are problem issues with behavior interventions. Do you know if this check-in, check-out would be the same?
Yes.
Maybe it's like every Tuesday they're having an off.
Yes. What Swiss will do, which Excel, thank you for bringing that up. What's your name? Amanda, thanks, Amanda. Thank you for bringing that up. You are exactly right. What Swiss will do that Excel tracking won't do, although we do have one Excel tracking, but what Swiss will do is you're entering the data in by period. So then you can tell, is it that kid's doing well overall and they're totally tanking in fifth period. And it's usually a teacher-student issue, right? So yes, it'll allow you to look at by day, by time of day, and so forth. And I love it. Thanks, Amanda, because you can cross-reference it with the other data. Heidi?
You can go onto the website and play around with it, which I'm doing right now. And there's a check-in, check-out report. So you can do school-wide, average daily points, student count, student period, student single period. So there's a lot of things that'll just automatically graph for you.
Right. Thank you, Heidi, for looking that up. And what she's saying is average points. What was the first one? Average daily point. Average
Average daily points.
Average daily points. When I'm looking system-wide, whether check and check out is working in my school, I look at average daily points. Yep. How are they doing across students? I learned this from one of the schools I'm working in. I highly recommend it. There's differing opinions about this, but I'm going to tell you why it's important. I gather 3 to 5 baseline data points. That means the kid does not check in, they don't check out, and they're not getting teacher feedback. So they don't know they're on it, right? So the teacher is filling out the daily progress report, but they're not talking to the kid. And the reason that's important, and it can be done while you're asking the parent whether this is a good idea, is because this is a real kid in one of my schools. Now, you never want to see this in research, an upward trend in the data. But when you look at this kid's data, it's all over the place with lots of places underneath the goal line. But how is he doing compared to baseline?
A lot better.
A lot better, right? If we had to do an average, it would be about here at 50-something, right? So why I like gathering baseline data, if I've got a kid down in the 20s, do you think a 70% goal would be appropriate? So I try to have the same goals across kids, but maybe for a week or two, that kid could start at 60 or 50, or you can decide. But the idea is that, and this is another real kid, real data. We've done baseline, and teachers have said, I realize this kid's not as bad as I thought, right? So we've had kids whose baseline data are actually pretty high, and they go, okay, they weren't as bad as I thought. We have something else we need to work on. So what I want you to do for the next 15 or 20 minutes is answer the question under number 4 and number 5. And also, if you have time, a lot of you said I need more time to answer the questions we've already been through. I want you to go back and answer those because I'm here till 12, and I want to be able to support you. My goal for the end of the day by 12 is that you will feel comfortable piloting this with 3 to 5 kids in the next week or two. And that means you have to have all these questions answered. So if you didn't get all the questions answered, and I'm going to give you time, go back and answer those questions. Okay, ready? Go. So what questions do you have about which kids to access the intervention or your data system? Any questions about that? Did you all figure it out?
I have a question.
Yes.
Which one do you think works best? Because I like the electronic version.
Oh.
What do you think to start with?
I'll be completely honest with you. We have absolutely no data showing the electronic version works. I'm not saying it doesn't work. You saw somebody in the video, they're using it. Those are not fake schools, those are real schools doing this. The first video, we had some fake schools. But that was done in 2004, so we didn't really have a lot of schools. But I don't know. So I don't have any data to show either way. To be honest with you, I say do paper, pencil first. But if it doesn't work for your school, don't do it. The main thing is how do you make sure that teacher's given the feedback? And if they're just on the computer doing this, they're going to be, so you just make sure that the feedback happens. Elementary schools, I say the paper, but it has to work for your school. So if the paper doesn't work for your school, then don't do it. That's a great question, though. If somebody wants a research study, you can compare the paper and pencil version. There's another, if anybody needs a dissertation or... So here's the deal. These kids cannot be on it. You want a dissertation, huh? Is that what you...
I'm done forever.
You're done forever? Darn it. Anybody looking for a master's thesis or dissertation? I have lots of ideas if you want. So this intervention is not forever. Right? And younger kids will want to be on it forever. The older kids are, when can I get off? And that's not true because some of the older kids actually really like it, particularly middle school or junior high. But so you have to, as a school, come up with the fading criteria right now. What will get kids off of this intervention? And this is yours. We don't have research-based goals in terms of fading. What a lot of my schools have done is, on average, for the past 6 weeks, they're above 80%. or on average for the past 6 weeks, it's above 70%. I don't like 70% as much. On average for the past 4 weeks, how often are you going to be looking at students to fade? That's the question. Are you going to be doing it monthly? Are you going to be doing it quarterly? What do you guys have, quarters or semesters or trimesters? Semesters? Quarters? Do you all have quarters, or is that just a...
Oh, quarters and semesters, we have both.
But who has, does everybody, Davis has quarters?
Yeah.
Okay. So one of the things that you could do is say every quarter we're going to look at everybody on and we're going to decide whether to fade. That sometimes works better than trying to figure it out monthly. You can decide on that. But you have to come up with a criteria. For how long, and don't make it a consecutive. It doesn't mean for 20 days, school days, this kid got above 80. They'll never make it. They'll never get off. So it has to be an average across a certain period of time. And then the question is, will you ask them to self-monitor or self-manage to fade them off? So we actually have the kids start rating their own behavior. And if you want to do this in high school, that's what the new app, the Check and Check Out app, I'm helping them design that in Oregon. I'm on the team to help them design that. One of the features they're doing in the app from the beginning is they're having high school students, they're having the teacher rate and the student rate on an app from the beginning. You can decide if you want to do that or not. But the main thing is you need to celebrate graduation. Meaning, and when I sit down with a student and say, hey, I've got this program for you, you're going to be on it. It's going to be time limited. It's not going to be forever. And guess what? You get to graduate. The graduation is really important for younger kids because they want that attention. They don't want to be off it. But you tell them you get to graduate. And then we put, so for example, in high school and middle schools, you can use, and you can actually I've done this at elementary too, you can use the graduates as helpers of the program. In elementary school, what I've found is kids want to be back on it because they miss the attention. Well, plan ahead. What else can that do to kid to get attention? Can they be the library helper? Can they be the check and check out helper? Can be the person who herds the kids down for check and check out? What is the attention replacement you can do? So the schools that I've been in, we've developed incentives for graduating and staying off. We've also celebrated graduation. We have diplomas. We have day-old cakes donated if you want to do that. But we also, some of the schools have alumni parties. You've graduated. I haven't seen any office disciplinary referrals in the last quarter. There's a little party. You can decide. But the main thing is you want to celebrate them graduating. You want to celebrate them being off and continuing the behavior that you wanted to see. Right? I don't know the answer to this, but internalizers, high school by the way, I would suggest they're going to be on longer. I think they're going to need more time and practice. Before I leave, I'm going to show you the data because it's pretty impressive. But I think they're going to need more time and practice to show these replacement behaviors. I would keep them on longer. That would just be my recommendation. This is one of our alumni parties where they came. I used to be the mascot of my high school, but that's not me. So this is, and I won't go over this, but this is what we do if we're interested in, using self-monitoring to check kids or to fade. We have the teacher and the student fill it out, the daily progress report. Once they're about 80% accurate or there's overlap, then we reduce check-ins and check-out. And so then once the kid is accurate, we have the student rating his or her own behavior, right? This would be easy to do in junior high and high school. But we've also done it in elementary schools. So what this is an example of a DPR at an elementary school for the whole week. So this kid checks in at the beginning of the week. They're self-monitoring themselves throughout the week, and then they check out at the end of the week. So we're reducing check-in, we're reducing check-out, and reducing teacher responsibility. So what I want you to do for about the next 5 to 10 minutes is talk about how are you going to get kids off? This will be important because you will get full. Your intervention will fill up and you won't be able to support more students unless you systematically figure out a way to get them off. Okay? So go ahead and answer the questions under number 6 and we'll come back together.